welcome to our Lead for City Showcase featuring the city of Santa Monica, California. We are so excited to kind of come back and get together with our community that's been so attentive to our webinars. We haven't done a cities focused one since the end of last year. So this is the first for 2022, and we're really looking forward to this conversation. So I did want to point out that we're going to use the showcase theme across the year. We're going to use it actually even for USGBC Live and for Greenville this year. Some of our sessions are really going to elevate the cities, the towns, the counties, all the local governments around the world that we've been working with. And so today is obviously March 16th. We do have 4 other sessions that are planned for the year. And my name, obviously, I haven't mentioned it, but is Hilary Varnidor. I'm my Vice President for Cities at USGBC. And I've worked really hard to curate some really interesting content this year, but I do want to point out, like, please email me at cities@usgbc.org if you have ideas or if you want to hear about a certain place or hear about a certain topic. You know, we would really love to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the community that's coming out to listen to our content. So please do that on your time. This one was sort of easy to come up with, though, I have to say. So, at the end of last year, the city of Santa Monica did achieve platinum in LEED version 4.1, and they were the first to do so in this version of the rating system. And so we were really honored to have Mayor Sue Himmelrich come to our end of year recognition program and really speak on behalf of the work at the city. And I think this quote is just so perfect for today because she really was talking about how they hope to have paved the way for others to achieve this distinction. And you're going to hear a lot about the city of Santa Monica today, all of the different things they've been doing for a number of years, for decades really, that got them to this milestone. And so we did put Mayor Himmelrich's full remarks on the city of Santa Monica's project page on our project directory. The link is at the bottom of the screen, and I know my colleague David Abel is going to put it in the chat for you. Just feel free to go there and listen to everything that she had to say, because it was really, really great. And it was a special moment for all of our projects at the end of the year. But, that really stood up the showcase idea. Let's start to showcase our cities this year and really start with Santa Monica to learn how they got to platinum. And, I think how they got to platinum is really, it's remarkable. Frankly, at the end of last year, they were also the first to even get over the 70-point threshold. So we're going to learn today, how they did it and what went into all of that work. And if you're curious, this just shows that we do have 23 total certifications in V4.1 at this point in time. The majority of those are actually gold, I think 13 of them. And you can see who's been certified to date on the list on my screen. Now I'm going to make sure we have Amanda on the panelist side, because I'm going to introduce everybody. I want to make sure she's over here. Okay, good. So I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to kind of hop back and give a little bit of Lead for Cities context before we really open up the floor. So first, I just want to start with David White, who is the city manager for Santa Monica, which is the organization's chief executive. He oversees a total city budget of more than $705 million and a workforce of 1,923 individuals. David oversees 12 city departments and implements city council policies and priorities. And if you were on a little early, you heard that he was with them last night in the chambers. He joined the city this past October and has also served as deputy city manager in Berkeley, and then city manager and finance director for the city of Fairfield, California. So welcome, David. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much. And before I get started, first and foremost, I obviously want to thank you, Hilary, for this opportunity to present and talk about all the great work, which you're going to hear very shortly from both Shannon and Amanda on. So they're the real professionals. They've been living and breathing this work every day, and they're the ones that are really going to give you some deep insight into how we really went on this journey to achieve this platinum status, which I will say Santa Monica absolutely cherishes and holds in very high regard. And we hope by the end of this conversation and the question and answer session, that we're helpful to many of you on this call to think through and evaluate how you too can be a part of this movement and achieve this status as well. So what I'm going to just do is offer some brief introductory comments and set the context and stage for who Santa Monica is, just so as Shannon and Amanda dig into the details, you can get an understanding of really who we are as a community. So for those of you that don't know, I'm sure many of you do, Santa Monica is a beautiful coastal community. We have about 90,000 residents. We have about 81,000 employees, almost 10,000 businesses. And prior to the pandemic, we welcomed an average of about 8 million visitors annually to our city. This is an interesting point of fact for me. About 70% of our residents are renters. And because of our commercial base and beach and tourist attractions, our daytime population approximately doubles in size with tourists, daytime visitors, and employees. So, we, as you can tell, we, in a lot of ways, are a small city, but we operate as a very large city throughout the day. As I mentioned, we're a relatively small coastal city. We are surrounded on 3 sides by the city of Los Angeles, and it's exciting that the 4th side is the ocean. We're about 8.3 square miles. And as I mentioned, some might call us small. I like to characterize us as more of a mid-sized city. And I also like to categorize us as being a full-service city on steroids. So we're all the typical things you expect of a city. We're police and fire and public works, but we also operate our own bus system. We have an incredibly active pier that is wildly successful and a draw for visitors throughout the country and throughout the world. We have a popular amusement park. We have our own airport, a very busy and populated community college, and our very own school district that we share with Malibu. We have a robust and diverse economy and are known by many as Silicon Beach. We attract innovative organizations with several tech startups and growing businesses such as Snapchat, GoodRx, and most recently, for those of you in the shared mobility, VO and Red Bull. And I think really, and importantly, I'm sure to everyone on this webinar, we're home to several well-known environmental organizations such as NRDC, Heal the Bay, and Global Green. So I want to talk a little bit about our vision for the city, and I'll be brief so we can get into the guts of the discussion. We are one of the first cities to adopt a sustainable city plan, and this dates all the way back to 1994. And from the very beginning, the city has been committed to triple bottom line and demonstrated that economic vitality, social equity, and environmental protection are mutually dependent. Both the local government and the community as a whole support sustainable practices. A really fabulous point for everyone on this webinar is that our Chamber of Commerce was one of the first chambers to be a green business certified in the nation. And for me, having recently joined the city, it's been really fortunate for myself to have a council that supports and recognizes the importance of sustainability and the urgency to address climate change. For those of you that are in local government, you know how maddening it can be to have to convince your bosses to really see the way and understand the urgency of this message. And because of their support, they've adopted several aggressive and ambitious policies for Santa Monica to reach our goal. And I just want to kind of give you the big numbers that we're really working hard to achieve. Water self-sufficiency by 2023, zero waste by 2030, and carbon neutrality by 2050. And we are well on our way to meeting all those goals. We have a number of very large public works projects in motion right now that are going to be critical to us hitting that water self-sufficiency target on time. As Hilary mentioned, I'm very new to Santa Monica, and what I've learned is that because of the plans adopted by our council, because of our thoughtful approach to pilot new initiatives at a small scale before scaling, and because of the community support, sustainability really is woven into the DNA of Santa Monica, such that it informs our decision-making from the get-go rather than being something that is treated as an afterthought. As a result, probably no surprise to many of you, our ability to achieve Platinum LEED certification is really just a manifestation of our longstanding commitment to sustainability practices. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Sustainability Officer, someone who I've really enjoyed watching in my short time here from the city do her work, Shannon Perry. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Hilary and Amanda. I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to share our experience with all of you on this webinar. As David mentioned, the key foundation for our sustainability efforts here in Santa Monica is our Sustainable City Plan. And one of the things that we think is incredibly valuable about this moment is that our Sustainable City Plan truly reflects a triple bottom line approach to sustainability. And it sets aggressive but achievable goals for what that means for local government and for our community as a whole. We prioritize performance indicators as our primary tool to track progress, to make sure that we're not just talking about sustainability, but that we're actually achieving meaningful outcomes. The Sustainable City Plan framework provides us with an honest assessment of our successes, which we make a point to celebrate often, and shows us areas of improvement, which we take to our council and our community in order to focus on individual programs and policies in a coordinated way that helps us achieve our established sustainability goals. Every few years, we identify a new outcome or a new policy framework that amplifies the impact of our work. In 2013, we passed our Rights of Nature Ordinance. It was the first of a kind in the nation and the first to bestow upon ecosystems the right to flourish in an urban environment. In 2015, we achieved a 20% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions below our established 1990 baseline. In 2019, we took the next step and brought our climate action and adaptation plan to council and to the community in order to focus our efforts on meaningful adaptation strategies and emissions reduction. Today, I am happy to report that the city of Santa Monica has achieved 60% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions below our 1990 level. That same year, we consolidated much of the sustainability related work in our municipal code under its own article, really establishing sustainability and the outcomes in the Sustainable City Plan as a core element of our operations. Throughout our history, we have also relied on the expertise of local experts in the form of our Sustainability Commission. The local experts who we rely on are IPCC climate report authors, data scientists, professors, researchers, and leaders in the nonprofit community. Even more so, they are residents of the city of Santa Monica, and they love this as their home. They were an effective tool for us. They communicate the voice of the community, and they provide wise counsel to staff and direct recommendations to our city council. They have served in this role for more than 25 years. Although some of them probably feel like they have individually served for 25 years, I should clarify that the commission itself has been in existence for 25 years. In addition to working together with our community and with our task force, we prioritize making steady progress to integrate sustainability into the systems that drive our municipal and community actions. This was an important step in integrating sustainable practices across our organization and moving away from the idea that sustainability was an add-on or additional work for staff or the community. On the slide, you can see our climate action plan, our greenhouse gas emission inventory, our sustainable city plan, our sustainable rights ordinance report, our EV action plan, and even our pedestrian action plan. Each of these documents, which reflect the core work of the city of Santa Monica, have sustainability integrated as a core value, so that we're not coming in afterwards and thinking about the places we can add, but that we do this work from the foundation of sustainability. In short, the way that we get our work done is we start with a program or policy, we endeavor to understand our meaningful impacts, we celebrate our small wins, we amplify the impacts that we are able to achieve, and then we integrate our efforts into our core services. Over time, we have found immense value in having established clear goals and making data-informed decisions. We also focus on relationships. And this is one of the most important things that we've learned. Oftentimes we need both the data science and the honest assessment and the human relationships. We've quickly realized that the most important thing for us is to harness the power of community. This allows us to enhance our resources, to prevent harm to the natural environment and human health, and benefit the social and economic well-being of our community for the sake of current and future generations. To this day, that simple statement of our intention continues to direct our work. As we're going through the process of addressing some of the early sustainability issues, such as drought response, green power, recycling and waste management, affordable housing, green building, alternative fuels, and economic diversity, organizations such as National Geographic and Popular Mechanic started to do an interesting thing. They started to rank sustainable cities. You might think that this was an exciting moment in the evolution of the national sustainability movement. We were getting a lot of press, and the moment caused a lot of competition between cities. While we know competition in the classic Greek sense can pull out individual or community excellence, competition can also be a distraction. At a point when cities should have been working together and learning from each other, we were spending a lot of time responding to our city councils and mayors, explaining why we weren't first on the list. In reality, the rankings were based on poorly sourced data and inconsistent reporting requirements. There was not a national standard that established how cities should monitor their sustainability outcomes. There was also no network for sustainability professionals to work together. So at this moment, instead of competing with each other, our city and cities across the country came together to create USDN, the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, and STAR. USDN and STAR together really laid the foundation for the success that we are all participating in now. STAR was the early version of what has become LEED for cities, and it established the national rating system for sustainability. This moment allowed cities to work together, to share resources, to learn from shared challenges, and amplify our impacts. It also gave us a chance here in Santa Monica to update our sustainable city plan with both local priorities and national standards. This was a significant step for us in our evolution from developing independent programs and policies meant to achieve specific outcomes to really integrating systemic change and allowing sustainability to be the core value in the city. This was not just happening here in Santa Monica, but we started to see LEED for cities create this opportunity across the country. So here in Santa Monica, together with our local residents and businesses, in collaboration with our regional, state, and national partners, we have focused on building a community-wide culture, one where we are working together to not only address, but to improve the outcomes in this nuanced relationship between environmental protection, economic vitality, and social equity. I'd like to take this moment to thank Amanda Grossman on our team, who has really led the effort to achieve our LEED Platinum certification. And I'm going to hand the presentation over to her so she can take you through some of our details.
Thank you, Shannon and Dave, for laying that context for our audience. So as my colleagues Dave and Shannon covered, Santa Monica has a long history in sustainability. Santa Monica has been doing performance management of our sustainable city plan. And as shown on the screen, our city manages a performance dashboard for our sustainable city plan that highlights all of our different indicators and how we're performing. And so early on, it set a good foundation as we went through the process for LEED for cities, as we were able to look at our data and see what we currently are measuring and what LEED for cities was asking for. Early on in the process, we set a goal that we were aiming for platinum. And as the project manager, it was important to look very closely at every credit to see what we were able to accomplish and achieve. If we didn't meet a certain threshold for a credit in possibly like option 1, we looked at the other options or option 2 to see if it was possible to achieve that point. Going through the different credits, some of the credits we had already had data for, which was helpful. And we had already language and narrative built into different strategic plans or staff reports. So we're easily able to transform that information and put it into our LEED for Cities application, which I highly recommend if you're going through the process, not to reinvent the wheel, but look at information that you already have that's written. That way you're not spending the time rewriting what's already written. And then some credits we were able to rule out from the very beginning that were not applicable to Santa Monica. And then some other credits we had to start from scratch and create the documentation necessary for LEED for Cities. So it did take some time, but we were diligent in looking at every single credit in order to achieve platinum. And LEED for Cities sets a solid framework for cities to mirror their sustainability strategies. Santa Monica has had our sustainable city plan as a framework, but it was interesting to mirror the two and see where evaluate our sustainable city plan and identify any gaps that were not in our sustainable city plan that were in LEED for Cities. And as we're going through the process of updating our sustainable city plan and setting targets for the next milestone of 2025 and 2030, we're looking at LEED for Cities of the different metrics and indicators used in their application and how we can adopt them into our sustainable city plan. And I think that LEED for Cities sets a good foundation for any cities that are starting from scratch and don't have a sustainable city plan. They can kind of use LEED for Cities as a roadmap of what the things that they can use in their either plan or climate action plan moving forward. So I just move on to the next slide. So I just wanted to highlight some things from our application that we have done well or that were highlighted from the review committee. So our greenhouse gas reductions were highlighted in our application. The city of Santa Monica regularly conducts a greenhouse gas inventory, and we're currently measuring at about 60% reduction in emissions below 1990 levels. And as indicated on the slide, you can show it shows a reduction in our emissions. I believe this is actually from 2015, so it's a little outdated, but it still shows the areas that where we have reduction. And it's important to note that while we were reducing emissions, we did have economic growth, and it shows that our population had increased as well as our economy. And our sales tax and our jobs had also increased. With LEED for Cities, we were able to measure greenhouse gases versus the gross domestic product. And so we were able to achieve that credit. I think it's under the low carbon intensity credit. That was one of the highlights from our application, as well as the emissions per capita. And it's important to note that while this is something that we are measuring and tracking, we want to still have a cap of our emissions. And even though, regardless of whether population is increasing, we want to keep our greenhouse gas emissions low. Next slide. Some other credits that were highlighted in from the review committee, we were able to achieve all the credits possible in, or we had applied for all the credits in the transportation and land use category. And we also had applied for every credit in the quality of life category as well. We were able to achieve the full points possible in the innovation category, as well as the regional priority category. So we were able to submit some credits of innovative products that we've done, pilot projects, as well as regional projects that we've done with different partners in the area. And we can talk about that in a little bit. But I'll hand it back over to Hilary if you want to go into some questions.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So let's see. I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second. We do have two questions that are pretty direct to the remarks that you and Shannon just made. So I'm going to cover them really first, and then I'm going to go back and do a quick LEED for Cities context with your certification report so folks can see it. And then we'll get the dialogue going because there's so much to talk about. But Stella Tarnay, who's actually in DC, I know her, she's put some good questions in. So first she just was asking about your 60% reduction. And I think your last slide might have answered her question, but she just wanted someone to say out loud that that was citywide, not just operations, because it's a pretty impressive base year. So you all want to just hit on that point real quick?
Sure. So it is citywide. And I will just note, we had a huge decrease in our greenhouse gas emissions with the recent implementation of our community choice aggregation, which is a regional collaboration with other cities to provide 100% renewable energy to our residents and businesses.
All right, great. The other question,
Hilary,
Shannon,
go ahead. Okay with you if I followed up on that, just to say, I think that question demonstrates a really key element of our success that I would love to share with other practitioners. And that is that we often start small and then with a pilot project, and then or within municipal operations, and then we scale up. So we started looking at green power from the perspective of municipal operations and buying RECs to offset the green power equivalent of the usage for municipal operations. Having done that over a period of time and demonstrating the impacts, we were then able to look at options for providing green power for our community. And initially, when we looked at that, we were looking at potential green power solutions with in partnership with our utility, but we quickly realized that the Clean Power Alliance and community choice aggregation was going to provide us the most meaningful outcomes. And so we were able to bring this small pilot within the city and scale it all the way up to our community. And now we have 98% participation between our residents and businesses in our Clean Power Alliance community choice aggregation. So that means that 98% of residents and businesses are opting in to purchase 100% green power. When they opted in, there was a small additional cost for the green power. Subsequently, with changes in the the pricing for our local utility, our residents and businesses are getting green power at the same, or in some instances, lower cost than those who are not choosing it. So it's one of those opportunities to really think about two things. One is starting small and then amplifying your impacts. And then the second is really making the use case from both the environmental and human health, but also the economic perspective that some of these investments in sustainability, while they cost more upfront, they provide a price stability that ends up benefiting our community over time.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I saw she put in the chat, like, impressive. So yeah, thanks for giving us some more information. Another thing that she brought up, which I think, since you just were talking, you had that slide with all of the plans. She was asking about, she said, please say more about integration and relationships. Too often various sustainability plans, like some of those that you put up, might stand alone or run on their own tracks rather than like consider how the goals can be integrated. So she's just, curious if you could allude about how they're working together to meet the strategic goals and priorities of the city. Does anybody want to hit that one?
Amanda, do you want to go first, or would you like me to?
I'll have you go.
Okay. So I think this is a really interesting question. And really what it comes down to is building that culture of sustainability. We are very lucky in Santa Monica that we have an active and engaged resident base. We have businesses who prioritize coming to sustainability because of the sustainability infrastructure that we provide. And we have a council who've historically been incredibly supportive and urging us to integrate sustainability. We also, because of that, and because our sustainable city plan has been council adopted policy for 25 years, we now know it has become the organizational practice to start with those outcomes. How does this affect our local environment? What are the long-term and short-term costs of this work? And how will this affect different elements of our community? I think one of the places where you really see this is our recent strategy for a sustainable local economy. Cities do economic development all the time. We develop economic strategies all the time, particularly post-pandemic. About 8 to 10 years ago, we did our first strategy for a sustainable local economy, where we looked not only at what are the key business sectors that we need to attract to Santa Monica, but we prioritized them by their energy and water use, the amount of waste that they generate, the number of employees that they have, and the average wage in that industry. Because we really wanted to have our economic development strategy be an expression of our overall sustainability goals. And then when it came time to update our economic development strategy, we worked with a global partner who focuses really on this concept of the good life and really looks at, sustainability, economic development as the way that you create a framework for, flourishing in different ways. So I think that's an example of the ways that we've looked at the core service of the city. Cities do economic development strategies. They pave roads, they provide public spaces, they create parks, right? And so we don't think of sustainability as another thing we do. We think of sustainability as how we do the things we do, and it allows us to really focus it in that way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I do hope people have so many questions, they keep putting them in, because we're just doing Q&A in the middle and it's fun. And I have one more really awesome question that I wanted to get to David, because, Shannon, you brought up economic growth and economic perspective on things. And David, as the city manager, has all of this been connected to with like your municipal bond rating. So the specific question is, with all the leadership on sustainability, has it become a consideration in the underwriting decisions of any of the financial institutions helping Santa Monica issue bonds or other types of municipal financing?
I haven't yet seen, and I haven't participated in Santa Monica directly in doing financings. I've done many municipal financings throughout my career. I haven't yet seen explicitly sustainably used as a metric to rate an organization per se, but let me kind of come at it a different way and connect the dots about how it does potentially impact what I would consider our bond rating. And that's through really what Shannon was talking about with respect to economic growth and economic development. So, what I have found, and I've seen this specifically in Santa Monica, is that once you sort of identify the target businesses you're looking for, and you're thinking about how you want to grow your economy, what I have found is that the businesses that Santa Monica is eager to attract and retain are particularly motivated to be here because of our commitment to sustainability. So they're thinking about, right, they're thinking about their corporate core values and how being in Santa Monica resonates and reflects those values. They're also thinking about the employees that they're trying to attract and retain and the quality of life that they're looking to provide for their employees. You know, there's no doubt you can get around Santa Monica without ever having to get into a car. And when you think about the workforce of today, you know, that is a core value for folks, you know, across the demographic. And so what I would really offer and suggest is that, you know, commitment to sustainability has reinforced our economic foundation, which has allowed us to be, you know, a financially sound organization, which has contributed to us being in a very good position from a municipal underwriting perspective.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wish I lived in a place where I could get around my entire city without my car. So I'm going to just throw up my original slides really quick because I do want to show the city's report. Well, first, I do want to just remind everyone we're talking about LEED version 4.1, and David Abel from our side is going to include the link to our tools homepage just to make sure people can get the scorecard, the rating system, and all the resources that we're referencing today. And, you know, Santa Monica is one dot on this big map. 165 local governments have registered and committed to using LEED for Cities as their sustainability framework. So getting platinum out of this group is really remarkable. We're already talking about the program goals, and certainly a platinum city like Santa Monica is really talking the talk and walking the walk on all of these. And so really exciting to see, you know, these are goals that inform the rating system, but to see them on the ground is really exciting. Amanda mentioned a couple of prereqs and credits. So I just wanted to show the scorecard so folks see the holistic approach to sustainability that the LEED for Cities rating system takes. And I think when we get a little deeper into our discussion, you know, we'll probably hone in on a couple of the categories where you all did really well, but I want to talk about some, you know, maybe where you didn't get as many points. I don't know that it's reflective of what's going on the ground, because you have a lot to say, even in a prerequisite like solid waste management that gives you 0 points, but is required to proceed. So this is just the kind of high level look at the overview of your certification results. And so I just wanted folks to be able to see that we have the performance score. That's a prerequisite where you put 14 data for 14 indicators into ARC and get your score. And then you also have a whole system of other prereqs that don't get points in credit. So just looking at this kind of briefly, you can see how Santa Monica did really well on transportation performance, energy and emissions performance, quality of life performance, and frankly, water performance too. I mean, waste is the lowest, but that tends to be the case with a lot of our projects. Across the various categories, you've already talked about the standouts where you applied for everything, you know, and went after all the credits in transportation and land use and quality of life, and then got all those points in innovation and regional priority. So this is just to give everyone sort of a snapshot of what it takes to get to platinum. There are 110 points in the rating system. So even a city like Santa Monica still has some things that they can identify to work on as next steps. So perhaps we'll get into that a bit. I just wanted to show that, and now I'll stop sharing again, and we'll just kind of get into you know, our discussion. I don't know if do you all want to start with innovation first, because I know you have a couple of there were a lot of interesting things that came out of your application. I've made the point to others that it's like the first place I go is to look at the innovation section, because that's where you tell us things that, you know, aren't in the rating system or areas where you've gone above and beyond. So maybe, you know, maybe we start there and just talk about a couple of the things that you thought were just that are really interesting and definitely leading the way that are happening in your city as a start. You all want to kick off with zero emissions delivery zones and break that one down?
Sure. Do you want me to share the slide, or are you able to?
I'll do it for you.
Okay.
Just, yeah, make it easier. saw it in there.
So as Hilary had mentioned, it was actually in regional priority category because we work closely with an organization called the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, or LACI. And we were able to pilot what's called the zero emission delivery zone on our downtown Santa Monica area. And basically we're allocating spaces for zero emission vehicles and other types of transportation. So as you can see on the slide, we have these little, we use this company called Coco. So it's a little, I want to say robot, but it's a remote used device that's transporting food or groceries to individuals throughout the community. We also have electric bicycles and electric vans and cars that are delivering items. And I don't know if Shannon has any more comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, what I would add again is that this is a pilot project, right? It's a 1 square mile area in our downtown region that really is meant to demonstrate the efficacy of a zero emission delivery zone. So products come in from partners as large as IKEA, and they come in and then they're distributed to these smaller, neighborhood scale electric vehicles for their final distribution. And this is one of those places where, excuse me, a small pilot project has the potential to really be scalable. This project itself is moving to another community in Pennsylvania and is really intended to have significant impacts for the entire Los Angeles region. So it's really a proof of concept for our regional efforts to reduce air pollution and congestion in preparation for hosting the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And so this is just one of those places where we start small. We've learned some lessons in how we've designed it correctly and where we've needed to tweak. And then we are really communicating to both our residents and businesses, as well as the businesses for whom we are doing the delivery, to really make sure that the model is working, to refine it, and then bring it to scale in the region. I will say, as an antidote, the robot that Amanda referenced is a small box, pink, with a little bike trailer flag on it that rolls through the city, and people love it. They have their own social hashtag. People take pictures of them. People race them across the street. So they've actually not only served this really important air quality and emissions reduction goal, but they've really come to be a fun moment in an otherwise very unusual 2 years. So we did launch this project during the pandemic. So it's been, that has been a moment of joy that people have appreciated, having these roll through the streets.
I heard about this first from Matt at the COP in Glasgow. He was talking about it there, and a lot of the European cities are very much focused on this kind of work, as well as zero emissions tied to construction and major air pollution projects like downtown and things like that. So it's really cool.
Absolutely.
To come through.
The electrification of buildings and vehicles really is that next big step. And so looking for opportunities where it's effective and scalable, but also where it can be fun, is a really important strategy for us.
Since we have your slides over here, do you guys want to talk about the next one that's here, the beach restoration?
Sure. So I think this one actually fell under the natural systems and ecology category. But we are working collaboratively with some local environmental advocacy groups. So specific for this one is the Bay Foundation. So we piloted what's called beach restoration project and creating a natural sand dune within our beach. As you can see here, that we had some vegetation, and there's also been some wildlife that's come back to the region because of this project. And I believe it was launched in 2015. Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong. But it's been at least, I think they just had their 5-year anniversary. So been around for a little while. And because of the success of this program, now they're scaling it up, and we're trying to do more of the Santa Monica Beach, but it's also, they just launched one in Manhattan Beach as well. So it's been a successful a pilot project that we've been able to expand the impact of it.
Yeah, I think this is yet again an example of pilot project that goes to scale. So the many people will be surprised to know that these long stretches of perfectly even sand that you've come to associate with much of Southern California is not the natural habitat of our beaches. Our beaches are raked often. And so that is why they look the way they do. When our beaches are allowed to develop their own natural ecological expression, the sand dunes are a natural part of our ecosystem. And so this project really was meant to demonstrate that with minimal investment, identifying a spot, reducing our raking, and then planting some native plants, that we would see the restoration in the beach dunes. And we did this for two reasons. Number one is that it provides a natural, resilient response to sea level rise. And it also provides increased biodiversity and restores some of the native habitat for the snowy plover and other native plants and animals. The project was incredibly successful. We did work with our local businesses who previously had that uninterrupted beachfront property, as well as our city staff whose job it is to rake the beach and to make sure that this restoration of the ecological zone would not diminish the property, the property owner's experience of the beach, and that it would enhance public access to the beach, while also not creating an undue burden to our staff to maintain the location. And by all accounts, all three of those constituents are really happy with the outcomes of the pilot project. So we are now starting phase 2 of the project, and now starting to look more strategically at our long-term vision for natural dune restoration as part of our sea level rise resiliency strategies, as well as our sustainability and ecological health. So while I do not anticipate a future where you will see an uninterrupted stretch of sand dunes from border to border, I think an integrated network of these that are really providing these benefits are a natural outcome of the pilot.
I clearly shifted images too soon. Sorry about that. I brought up that this article in the Guardian, offline, and it, people have been talking about behavior change and getting, really individuals to take the actions necessary to help the cities that they live in, get to their global emissions targets, or just their local emissions targets to meet the global targets. And so some things had stood out. I mean, obviously your work on the energy and emissions category is no doubt like very connected to all of this. But on the personal level, I saw that you had a couple of things that really were kind of targeting behaviors that people have, or just things activities that people do in the city. So this article kind of called out 6 different things that people can do that would substantially reduce impact on emissions. I think it's 25% global. And so one's around food. You already talked about people don't need a car in Santa Monica, so you're helping your residents get another one of these done. But one of the things that was in your innovation section was the Good Food for All agenda, and it did specifically talk about this first one. So I thought I would just, sometimes people wonder, like, how can a local government really impact behavior change? And so I thought that might be just an interesting innovation project to feature for this one. And then I want to move into healthy nail salons and talk a little bit about the social side and people and equity and diversity and all that. So let's start with food, and then we'll make a shift.
Well, I'll let Shannon and Amanda talk about what they're doing, but I'll say the city council took bold action by hiring a vegan city manager. So that probably was their best way to lead by
Okay.
example. So, but I'll let Shannon and Amanda talk about some of the things that I've seen that they've got percolating in the community to help folks get to that goal.
That's great.
So I'll just say that a lot of the things that we've mentioned so far have been more infrastructure changes, but our city does a lot with behavior change and community engagement. We work very closely with community outreach partners to engage with the community and encourage and support sustainable behaviors, one being a more sustainable diet. And so I think it was 2013, we signed on to a sustainable food commitment through the Cool Foods Pledge. And we're looking at more buying locally, eating more plant-based, or reducing meat and dairy consumption, as well as avoiding processed food, eating more organic, and less packaging as well. And through that program, we've offered different events and programming to help support that mission. We do a film series, and we do at least 4 movies a year to the community, as well as followed by a panel. And typically we've done at least 1 food documentary as part of that film series to help either encourage plant-based, buying locally, or just highlighting some of the environmental impacts of the agricultural industry. We also, before COVID, we had a sustainable food expo that just highlighted a lot of local food vendors that either provided plant-based options or alternatives, or provided some organic options. We had a pop-up farmers market there. We had small bites, and we had cooking demonstrations, and it was a great evening for people to really see what's in their community and can help support these sustainable practices.
Yeah, I will just add that this was one of the, I was so happy to see this on the list when you brought that out, because this is one of those places where we have seen so much enthusiasm and so much participation from very diverse participants in our community, from our travel and tourism to our Chamber of Commerce, to residents and businesses and community college students, our school district. People got really excited about the idea of sustainable food. We had a community-wide Meatless Monday campaign, and then we did we sort of did a gamification approach and had a competition to see who could accumulate the most points by participating in this Meatless Monday campaign. It was really fun, and the participation surprised us all. People really got it. And food just seems to be a place where people understand that innate relationship between health and sustainability. And I will just reiterate what Amanda said, broader than just the food piece, is the power of film. Hosting film screenings has turned out to be one of the most successful tools that we've used, because we have career professionals telling dynamic stories about the subjects we care about. And it turns out it's far more engaging than hearing bureaucrats talk sometimes. So we have learned this about ourselves. And so we now really focus on that. And it's been really successable. Happy to turn our attention over to our Healthy Nail campaign too, Hilary, if you want a quick summary on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's unique to see it come through innovation. And as I read through all of the details, clearly an important issue. So yeah, just maybe tell everybody about it.
The Healthy Nail Salon program is a program that the City of Santa Monica did in collaboration with the California Healthy Nail Collaborative. And about 30 nail salons in Santa Monica participated in this voluntary program that was really focused on creating healthier environments for workers, for owners, and for the visitors who come to nail salons. So really looking at circulation in the facilities, looking at ventilation in the facilities, looking at the ingredients and the toxicity of the materials and products used, and just really pulling together this idea that you can still get the service you want, but if you are looking carefully, you can do that in a way that is much less toxic and provides much healthier and safer environments primarily for employees, because they're in the facility much longer than a person who comes just to get their nails done.
Well, great. So we have a few minutes left. Maybe we just touch on this one thing that came in, since we haven't. So someone just said, amazing job. It's inspiring to hear about all your accomplishments. And they just want to hear which category you found most difficult or challenging. And that's sort of tied to a question I had about like, what's one thing you would change about LEED for Cities? So maybe we'll last question with that one.
Amanda, do you want to start?
Sure. So as noted, I think in the question and also on our score sheet, I would say that the category that was the most challenging is probably the materials and resources. There was a few credits that were not applicable to Santa Monica just because we either didn't have that data, that backlog of data, so we couldn't provide that documentation. So we just had to kind of rule it out, unfortunately. So that was unfortunate, but we were looking for other options within those categories that we could apply. So that was probably the toughest category for us.
Does that feed into one thing you would change?
Yeah, maybe.
Like
I think
take everything from solid waste management out and have them credits, because I saw a lot of content in there about the community-wide composting and the work on hazards, and you have the other piece about with working with restaurants for like, and I've eaten at a restaurant where my fork was biodegradable.
Yeah, so I think Santa Monica is doing a lot on our waste front. We have a zero waste strategic plan that we've been working on different initiatives to divert waste as well as reduce waste. And so looking at the different credits, we were trying to figure out ways that we can apply the things that we're doing to the application. So it's just unfortunate that some of the credits just we didn't have the content that LEED for Cities was asking for.
And I do think that we did appreciate that there were these opportunities to add in the programs that we are doing, because I do think it gives you like a robust understanding. And I think the waste section is tricky for cities across the country right now. We've all seen what's happening to global recycling markets. And we also, here in California, statewide, we have AB 1383, which requires mandatory organics composting. And one of the things that we're starting to see is this nexus between front-end programs and back-end infrastructure to really do the processing. So I would say that, the obstacle is the opportunity. So for us, we're really now able to focus on the things that this national rating system pointed out to us that we're not yet able to achieve. And so, I think that it's good for us to be able to look at that as well.
Yeah, collectively, I think the local governments around the country are, in the same boat in that category. And it's sort of, where we were maybe with our climate and energy programs like 15 years ago. I make the reference about the bills being in the file cabinet back then, and now it's all on Energy Star, and we're, measuring performance on a daily basis. I think that industry needs to get there too. So David, I know you have some final thoughts or some wrap up thoughts. So I want to go to you, and then after you do that, I'll just do some real basic logistics for folks on the call so they know where to find our program and going forward next steps.
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you. And again, I really want to thank Shannon and Amanda for their tremendous leadership over the years in Santa Monica. I think, you see it from the outside, but as someone who came from the outside and now is seeing it from the inside, the power of their work, their commitment to this work is really exemplary. So I just really want to thank them, to everyone on this webinar, for all their tremendous work for the city. I would just conclude with a few thoughts, and Shannon touched on some of these points and Amanda did as well. And I think it's just really important to reiterate them, because I know, when you look at this presentation, you see all the plans and you think about all the work that it takes to achieve this kind of rating and to really move in the path of sustainability, is to really just focus on some basics and a framework for thinking about the future. And from my perspective, as someone who really just is a local government manager, is to really think about this from the perspective of change management. And just to really reiterate what Shannon said, it's really important to start small and really, think about leveraging pilot projects and use those to celebrate those early wins. And as Amanda pointed out, really thinking about and expanding and measuring impact is important. So you can point, to progress along the way. And then really thinking about, our policies and procedures and really offering systems change to institutionalize new behaviors, because really once you can show that success and then you can adapt your policies, as Shannon and Amanda have mentioned, I mean, this work now for us is just sort of, is really just, second nature to us. It's not something that really comes with a lot of needed pushing and pulling. And in, a couple of thoughts in conclusion from my perspective, again, I have found in my experience that local governments tend to think of sustainability as really an add-on to the work of what we do. But really here in Santa Monica, we have really demonstrated that sustainability is a foundation in which we deliver our core services for our residents, businesses, and visitors. And just to kind of really talk about the snowball effect, I would really offer for everyone here that the ability to integrate sustainability practices really does result in a superior quality of life for our residents and our businesses. And I would really assert, as I talked about before when we touched on the financing side of things, that our commitment to sustainability has really positioned us for economic growth. We really have found that with increasing frequency, businesses are looking for communities that have this value orientation, but also know how to implement. So I'll leave it with there again. And Hilary, thank you very much for the opportunity to showcase really the amazing work of Santa Monica. And my hope is that, by doing that, that more and more cities are able to really enter this path and get on this journey. And I hope that, Shannon and Amanda can continue to be mentors and leaders for folks as they look to move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know we've heard from the city of Los Angeles that they're interested in getting started with your great work. So you're helping to also move some major projects, on the West Coast. So we thank you for that. For folks on the call, I know we're wrapping up. You can go to courses on education at USGBC to see our past on-demand education. This has been recorded. The recording will be uploaded to our homepage, which we put in the chat. That'll happen in a couple of days. You'll see the slides and the recording there. But if you'd like to get one CEU, you just have to take the quiz. That will take a couple of weeks for this program to be converted to on-demand education. But in the meantime, you can go and there's a LEED for Cities and Communities filter on that page. So you can just get directly to our programs. They're all free. And you'll love them. They're all really good. But also, I know that David Abel put in the chat that you can follow LEED for Cities and Communities on Eventbrite so that you just see the programs we have for the year, because they'll all come out that way. We also will be putting them on the usgbc.org, the events page, as they come up along the year. At the beginning, I gave you our inbox, cities@usgbc.org. That's how you reach out to us with any questions or follow-ups if you have ideas for future programs. And that's that homepage just to get to the right place. So with that, David, Shannon, and Amanda, thank you so much. This was really awesome just to get into the details a bit more and really hear what's happening. I know I want to be I don't want to add another plane trip, right? That's one of the 6 things I'm not supposed to do, but I'd love to fly out to Santa Monica and just enjoy your city for the day. So appreciate the time. We look forward to working with you as we all move forward on this shared work. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for everything.
Thank you, Hilary.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye.